a deliberately planned false flag or whether it is accidental or a blowback or an unintended consequence, it's always used to expand the state.
Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. I've personally been buying gold and silver from JM Bullion for over 2 years. They offer the best prices over spot that I can find, and I've never had a problem with an order. If you're looking to trade in some of your fiat paper for real money, check out jmbullion.com today. Today's guest is author Katie Owen. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Now, when did you first wake up to the need to prepare?
Oh, my goodness. I think it's in my DNA because my mother grew up during the Depression, and she taught me well. She wasn't, we didn't have that term prepper back in the day, but my mother was always prepared for emergencies. There was no way we were ever going to run out of food. She was a good saver, so we always kept a roof over our heads. And she was a single mom with 4 kids at one point. And I think I just kind of watched and learned. But as far as seriously believing that times are going to be extraordinarily hard, I think I started maybe 15 or 20 years ago and getting ready.
And that's a great lesson, the Great Depression. It's my grandmother went through that, and she had basically a little barter network. She made sorghum molasses from sorghum cane, and she would trade that for meat, and they made their own clothes, and she lived in rural Kentucky, and it took a long time for them to ever really come out of that. So they really lived that self-sufficient lifestyle for a lot of years. And one of the big differences I think that we would have if we had an economic condition similar to that again is that during the Great Depression, you had 90% of the population living in a rural area and only about 10% of the population living in a big city, because a huge portion of America was dedicated to food production. But since the invention of these big mega tractors that basically drive themselves
do it all, yeah.
And genetically modified corn that'll grow on a concrete lot, you had so many people that had to dedicate their time and energy to growing food, and now that we've got all of that. Now we've got 90% of the population living in the city and only 10% living in a rural area that even has the knowledge or the land or the understanding of how to produce their own food. So I think that it would be
it's true.
It'd be a lot worse, and I think we'd have a lot more catastrophic a die-off if we had those similar economic conditions again in America.
Yeah, I've done lots of reading over the years, and once I found out that the grocery stores will tide people, a healthy population that isn't in need, they'll tide you over 3 days, and in an emergency, I'm sure they'd clear the shelves a lot quicker than that. But that there is no storage. When I was a little girl, if you experienced this, but if you needed to go to the restroom and you were at the grocery store, you went on back to where there was a warehouse of food back there, and you had to wind your way through dark tunnels to find the bathroom. Now, there is nothing in the back of the grocery stores. They're empty. There's nothing extra. So, if you don't have it in your house, you're not going to have much time to get what you need at the grocery store.
Yeah, and you're right that the 3-day supply that they keep at the store is 3 days. If everybody came in that town and bought 3 days worth of food, then everybody would get that. But of course, the first 100 people are going to go in there and buy 30 days worth of food, and everybody else that comes in after them is going to get plastic forks and maybe some gum.
Yes. Exactly. And in our household, the Owens household, we wouldn't even need to go to the grocery store.
Good for you.
We would be packing up and heading to our refuge land.
Very good. And how
There
far
wouldn't
away
be
is that?
any time wasted. We're about, I'd say we're uh, maybe 20, 30 minutes away is all.
Good, good.
It's ready and waiting for us.
Now, you're a author, as we mentioned. Tell us
Yes.
about your books.
Um, I decided to write these books because I was studying Proverbs with a young woman who was just getting married for the very first time. And we started studying Proverbs 31, and I realized I was already a prepper, but I realized that this Proverbs 31 woman was a prepper. And what really caught my attention in the life of this perfect wife in Proverbs 31 is that she not only looked to the needs of her household, but she was able to look to the future without any fear. And I know so many young women, including a couple in my own family, who get afraid when we talk about hard times coming, and that fear paralyzes them. And I thought, I've read so many prepper books, and I'm on a lot of different blogs and a great couple of groups on Facebook. But we're all so experienced that we forget that these newbies, especially young women, young wives, or even middle-aged or older wives, don't know where to start. And so these books are really aimed at women who maybe don't know anything about prepping. One of the things I think I'm good at is imagining what someone doesn't know. In other words, a good teacher doesn't assume knowledge. They start from square one, and they make sure that the people listening understand the problem and how to solve it. And what I noticed in a number of prepper books, and there's great ones out there, and I love yours too, but generally they're written by men. They're kind of focused on action adventure, guns, ammo, and really boring foods to store like beans and rice. And when I first read my first one, maybe 15 years ago, I felt overwhelmed, and I just thought, I'm going to write something plain and simple, just the way I talk, and see if I can't get some people educated, especially women. And I've been criticized because my books are not aimed at the independent feminist. Although I think they certainly could benefit from all this information. They're too busy fighting for other causes that I'm not a believer in. But I'm really talking to women, most of the women I know, who love their families and want to take care of them. Single moms, married moms, grandmothers. So I hope that both books, the Beginning Prepper Guide for Women and Mrs. Owens' Intermediate Prepper Guide for Women, and I'm working on a third one right now, are full of just practical stuff that get people going. In my beginner book, I said, the thing is to not moan and groan and be afraid, but just start. And here's where you start. And I give them real practical stuff that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, but it's going to start making them feel like they can look to the future with joy.
And is change and the things that go around change, and particularly, economic hardship, is that something that you think is scarier for women?
Yes and no. One of the things that scares women about economic hardship is how hard it is on our husbands, because they feel such a duty to be the provider, and when they can't, for whatever reason, they worry about that. But also the basics, food, warmth, and then the secondary tier, life insurance and all that. But I talk in my first book about a woman that I knew whose husband came home one day very, very distraught. He had been laid off. It was very unexpected. He thought his company was doing well, and he got laid off. And to his amazement, his wife sat down with him and opened her books, and she had been paying ahead for years on their electric bill. Their mortgage was paid ahead. She had been storing food. And it wasn't anything like years and years of all this, but they were ahead a good 6 to 9 months, and he didn't even know it. And in that time, he actually ended up getting a job back with his company again. But for about 6 months, they had no income, and they were just fine.
Wow, that's great. That she had that buffer.
Well, that's what we all need to be thinking about, and in many ways, it's kind of a woman thing.
And
like I said in my book, my husband, Tucker's interested in OPSEC and ammo and collecting 5,000 pounds of beans and rice. But my point of view is different. I think a woman thinks of things in terms of the needs of her household. She looks at them differently, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it makes us able to fill all the holes that way because we're so different.
we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Kady Armor offers affordable body armor, including level 3 trauma plates made of AR-500 steel. They can endure multiple rounds from pistols and rifles up to 7.62 NATO. Their plates are available with Rhino Linings coatings to reduce SPA. Go to kadyarmor.com, that's CATI armor.com today.
When disaster strikes, it's too late to prepare. PrepperRecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, EMT shears, suture kit, Steri-Strips, tourniquet, ACS chest seal, tough strip bandages, gauze, and so much more. $89 includes shipping. To buy your individual first aid kit, go to PrepperRecon.com and click the store tab at the top of the homepage. Order today before it's too late.
One of the things that struck me about your books are the covers, because they don't really look like the covers of my books. I've got the, American Meltdown has the concertina wire strung across a fence, and then the Days of Noah, it's got this kind of dreary dark sky with this dystopian city way off in the background.
Yes.
And this kind of like the font is like blood red, and now yours is like sunny and happy, and it's like a farm. And now I guess, is that because if you're prepared for the shift that's coming, maybe it doesn't have to be so depressing?
Well, okay, I'll be honest. The covers of your books and others are the ones I'm attracted to, and so those are the ones I read when I want to read fiction, and it's interesting. And I do think dark times are coming. I know they are. Jesus said they were. Most Christians are going to lose their lives. And we see that darkness kind of covering the earth, but I know where I'm going, and I know what the end of the story is. So I refuse to be afraid as I look to the future. There's a passage in Daniel, I think it's chapter 11, where he talks about how Christians, well, the people of God, which is us, will perform great exploits. And I love that. Finally, maybe I get to perform some great exploits in my life.
Yeah, and I think that it doesn't have to be as dark, especially if you're prepared. Now, one of the things you keep bringing up is the Bible verses. Now, have you ever hit resistance from other Christians that think that it's not really a faith thing to prepare? You should just trust God, and He's going to prepare for you, and this is a lack of faith to be stockpiling beans and bullets and Band-Aids. Do you ever hear that?
Yes, absolutely. I have. In fact, it seems to be the majority opinion. Most of my life, it seems like I've always been in the minority. I don't understand. I don't understand someone who says they don't see that abortion is murder, for example. Mm-hmm. I don't see how Christians can look around them and read their Bible and not believe that we are called to prepare, because the Bible is full of the indications that that's the heart of God. He wants us prepared. I've been told that I'm not being spiritual by putting so much of my time, energy, and money into the physical, food stores and different things. It's very frustrating.
But Proverbs 22:3 says that the prudent man sees danger and takes refuge,
That's right.
but the fool continues in his way and suffers for it. So it sounds to me that the actual faith-filled thing to do would be to prepare, because that's following the instruction of the Bible, and that, to me, that's what faith is you sit down in the morning, you read your Bible with your cup of coffee or whatever, and then you get up and you try to live it out during the day. I think that's what
right.
faith is. I don't
do
think
too.
it's just this blind trust that nothing bad's ever going to happen. Because that's nowhere in the Bible where it says to do that. And so I don't think that's really what faith is.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine. I love her dearly. She's married and has a whole bunch of kids. And I said, where we picnic, that's where, you want to come if things get bad. And she said, I'm just not worried about this. If they come to the door and arrest us, then they come to the door and arrest us. And I said, well, you don't think you need to do anything to try to make that not happen? And she said, no. And I said, okay, then picture your daughter, Jenny, being taken to a different place than you, and you don't even know what they're doing to her. Picture your son, John, having his head cut off in front of you. Now, would you be willing to come to our property and see if you can stop that from happening? And she just kind of changed the subject. But, it's when they talk about being spiritual, it seems so pie in the sky, like, oh, what's the worst that'll happen? They can kill us. Well, actually, there's a lot worse that can happen than that they kill you.
Yeah.
And it's happening. We all see ISIS,
Yeah.
And what they're up to. And we seem to have a president in sympathy with the bad guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned abortion, and that's something this country's been getting away with for 42 years now.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this tendency. It's kind of like when you're a little kid and you don't get you steal the cookie the first time and you get away with it, and you steal the cookie the second time and you get away with it, and you just start to assume that there's never going to be any consequences for stealing the cookies. But sooner or later, you're going to get caught with your hand in the cookie jar.
Yep, and it's God that's going to be doing the catching.
Now, besides having less guns, and how is a ladies' prepper book different?
Okay. Well, just as a woman, I know what women that are interested in, and we're interested in the immediate needs of our household. Where Tucker's idea of prepping is his idea for basic survival is very, very different than mine. And I'm glad, because I think we are prepared as far as security as much as we can be. But women, the traditional woman, which everybody seems to hate nowadays, but there's actually a whole lot of us, we keep our houses clean because we love our families. We are always thinking ahead to the next meal because we love our families. We try to live within the budget of, the money that our husbands or maybe the wives to bring home. So what we think of in terms of, when I think in terms of kind of end of time preparation, I want to tuck my children and grandchildren into a comfortable, warm bed. I want them to go to sleep with full bellies. I want to have plenty of morale. I think is a really important thing that men don't necessarily think about, but I want to keep morale up. So I've got big arts and crafts boxes stored, and puzzles and games, board games, all kinds of things, and homeschool materials so we can keep learning together. I just think that women tend to think more in terms of the emotional needs and the health needs, and men tend to think more in terms of the protection needs.
And
I don't know if that makes any sense, but
oh yes, it certainly does, and we're certainly made different. God is designed women to fulfill a certain role and men to fulfill a certain role. And while we're saying all of that, I want to just clarify to everybody out there. I don't know how much you want to really talk about your day job, but being somebody that knows what it is, I'll just let everybody out there know that you're not the stereotypical barefoot and pregnant female.
I have been barefoot and pregnant at points in my life. But no, well, I'm a professional. And I have been for most of my adult life, and I'll be 60 this year. But we've got 4 children, and oh my goodness, how many grandchildren now? 17 grandchildren.
Wow.
None of whom are preppers. So that tells you where my struggles are.
Mm-hmm.
But we're getting there. We're getting there. Actually, one of my kids and her husband are starting to take all this seriously. But yeah, so we do well. My husband and I are both in the same profession, and we're partners together. But I am at home. I'm homeschooling our youngest, who is our daughter that we adopted from India years ago, and I take care of the business side of things, and my husband runs around doing all the out of the house stuff. But we've got a home office, and we do fine. We're not rich, but I am a professional, and so is he.
And have you done beekeeping?
Oh yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm 3rd generation beekeeper. So as I said, I got a lot from just growing up with a Mississippi mama. My beekeeping for us started about 15 or 16 years ago, kind of at the same time we were looking for land, and I was getting into the idea of prepping. It was during the Clinton administration. That's what got me scared, I think. Anyway.
That is scary. We might be getting
the
the sequel to that.
Pardon?
I said we might be getting the sequel to that horror film.
I never thought that Bill Clinton would look like a wonderful president, but man, he was nothing compared to this new guy. At least I saw that he was just kind of a political animal, maybe just an animal, but yeah, President Obama, he really makes me nervous. I will be really grateful if we get another election.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get somebody in there that's got some appreciation for liberty. I really like a lot of the things about Rand Paul. I know nobody's perfect, but he seems like he's on the right track. Now back to the bees.
Yes, the bees.
Oh,
I love the bees.
How much work do they require?
Not much.
And now, what about in the cold climates when it gets cold in the winter? What do they do? Do they hibernate? Do they sleep? Do they fly south? What do they do?
No, bees don't hibernate. They are alive and well inside of the hive on all cold days, and they keep the hive at about just under 100 degrees year-round inside. So they're either cooling it off or warming it up, depending on what's needed. In the cold climates, I have only read about this, but I know that beekeepers are all over the world. In fact, there's a huge beekeeper population in Alaska.
Wow.
I'm sure that they wrap their hives. We do occasionally, even here, but you can wrap the hives and with blankets or whatever. But you don't need to do much. An average bee lives about 3 weeks during the good weather. They're out scouting and bringing back pollen and nectar. In the wintertime, they live about 3 months because they're not out battering their wings to death. They're inside, just keeping it warm.
Oh, wow.
But they don't require much work at all. Maybe a week or two out of the year just extracting and cleaning things up, bottling the honey. But it's so much fun. It doesn't really seem like work because you're getting honey out of it. And we just invested in a flow hive, so we've got one coming in December. I am not a beekeeper who is down on innovations. I'm all for the idea that we can extract honey without disrupting the bee population so much.
Very cool.
So I'll know more about that in the spring if it's working.
Now, if you locate a beehive and it's in a tree, or they're building one in your shed, or if there's right next to me, there's actually a little colony in the ground. Now, can you get a suit and a little wood box hive and extract that and stick them in there, and they'll just adapt to the new location, or how does that work?
Actually, that's the way most of our bees have been obtained, is from, people will call. We're on a list of people who get called out to rescue the poor homeowner who's got a giant ball of bees hanging off a tree or coming out of their house or whatever. If we can get to the ball, see, I don't know about a hole in the ground. Doesn't sound like it's honeybees doing that.
Well,
But
they might
maybe.
be. I can't really see exactly where they are, but it's low, so there might be like a downed. It's kind of like in some woods right there behind my fence, and it looks like it could be like up underneath a downed tree.
Well,
Maybe they were in the tree before it fell. I don't know.
huh. Well, there's two different ways that they're wild. They've got either a hive somewhere, like in a tree trunk, or they've got a swarm, and a swarm is what you can catch and start a hive with. If they're already established somewhere, like in a wall, or if it's a regular hive where they've been laying, the queen's been laying eggs and they've been making, honey, I don't really know how you get those out without killing them. But swarms, the kind of, a big basketball size of bees that just hang from a tree or from somewhere else and freak people out, they're so easy to catch because there are no babies to protect, and the queen is just there in the very center of the ball. The bees aren't going to sting you. You could do it with bare hands and no suit, and I've done it. We put the suit on to catch swarms just to show off to people who think that we're these heroes coming in to rescue them from the scary swarm. But you just hold a box up to under the bees, and if it's on a branch, for example, you just carefully cut the branch off where the bees are hanging and drop it down in. If it's too big, my mama used to tell me that they would walk around and catch swarms. Her daddy would shake the branch of the tree, and the little kids would bang on tin pans. I don't know why. And the bees would just all fall into the box, and they keep the queen in the center. So catching swarms is really actually very easy. There's a lot on the internet on how to do it, and probably YouTube has pictures too. I posted something on Facebook just last year showing us catching our latest swarm, and we got 200 pounds of honey from that swarm in the first year.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you do some food storage besides beans and rice. What's some more tasty food storage that you do?
Well, one thing is a lot of people don't know this. Modern day people don't seem to know that you can can meat, and so I found out you could can meat and called my mom and said, "Did you know you can can meat?" And she just laughed at me because, of course, she did know that, but over the years had stopped doing it. And so one thing you can do, we're real meat eaters, is I picture, okay, we've got the beans and the rice, so I can make a soup out of that. What do I need? I need spices, so we stock up on spices. I need salt, so we stock up on salt. And if I can throw in, a couple of quart jars of canned steak or chicken thighs or whatever, boneless, then I have that. We're pretty well rounded now. We've got lots and lots of prepared, just add water foods that we've been buying, for the last dozen years. We'll get like 10 cans of that stuff a month just to add to the stores. What I tell people, the gals in my book, is just start small. Whatever you're buying at the grocery store that isn't going to degrade, like a can of tuna, buy one extra. Get in the habit of just buying a little bit extra of each thing that you can, and you'll start getting inspired to do more. It's like losing weight. It's hard to start, but once you start losing weight, it's kind of fun. And then suddenly you feel like, going an extra mile on your run or whatever. And prepping kind of snowballs that same way. But the basics are rice and beans still, because they're so cheap and they store so well. But we've added to it. So I'm going to be able to make all kinds of good stuff. We are learning how to dehydrate eggs, because we've got chickens. I don't know if you can hear my rooster.
Yeah, I heard him back there.
Yeah, he always knows when I'm on the phone. That's when he crows the most. Pretty soon our dog's going to start barking, I'm sure. But sorry, I don't know if I even answered your question, but I shop canned goods. I can things. We stored a lot of salt, and I have a little bit in my book about how important it is to get iodized salt. At least half of the salt that you get should be iodized, because a lot of foods, especially if women are cooking from scratch, are not going to have the iodine in them that are needed. So we store with our pressure canner, we store meats and whatever we get in from the garden. And we just bought, I don't know, lots and lots of cherries, because they're in season right now. And my youngest and I are looking at bright red fingers from all the cherries that we cut. But we dehydrated those, so
cool.
We use the dehydrator too. I think we're pretty set, unless we get 100 extra people coming to our refuge land if things really get bad. I think we're going to have plenty of good meals. I collect, cake mixes when they're 10 for $10 at the Piggly Wiggly or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I'll get 40 boxes, throw them into a Mylar bag and into a 5-gallon bucket, and I hope and pray that they'll be good when we open them up later. I think they will.
And I think girls are a little bit more in tune to the need for community and preparedness than the guys, and I think that's one of the areas that we need you guys to rescue us, because there's kind of this tendency for guys to just run off and do everything on our own, and sometimes we need a good woman to just reel us in and remind us that community is such an important part of preparedness. Do you agree?
Yes, thanks for saying that too. I think that is true, and it's taken many years, but we now have, as I said, 3 other families that are preparing with us, and we have regular camping trips. And frankly, I'm the one that thought it up, and it wasn't just for fun. It was so we get to know each other better, have fun times together. One of our group members is a retired military chaplain. He's a wonderful Christian, and so he'll lead us in Bible study together. I have actually, as part of my preps, I've collected, probably 100 Bibles, different versions, and probably 50 or 75 hymnals, just because they also they're great reading for one thing, but they would help us in community type meetings too, and singing songs. And we've got a lot of things recorded on MP3. And for Christmas, I got what I've been wanting, which was a Goal Zero solar charger. So I've stored thousands of books, reference and otherwise, on 5 Kindles that we've got in the house. And I'm always just trying to think of what what can we do together to keep morale up? Because you can feed somebody, but if morale is low, and I think people might show up scared, and we don't know what's going on in the world, and if we're in hiding, especially, community is so important. I don't think people could do it by themselves.
Yeah, and that's in Bibles, that's a great thing to stockpile. I think people don't think about a lot. After 9/11, everybody and their dog went to church for about 3 weeks there, and so the next time God takes us to the wedge shed, you might have a few more people that decide that maybe everything didn't just happen, and maybe we do need to look to our Creator. So that's great stuff.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Now, Katie, can you tell us the name of both of your books one more time?
Yes.
And where can the folks find those?
Okay. They're on Amazon in paperback form and Kindle. And they both start with Mrs. Owens. So OWEN''S. The first is Mrs. Owens' Beginning Prepper Guide for Women, Looking to the Future with Joy. And book 2 is Mrs. Owens' Intermediate Prepper Guide for Women, Laughing at the Days to Come, which is the same scripture verse, just different versions. And I'm currently writing a book 3 on tiny houses because we've built so many now. As I said, I'm always thinking about the needs of the household, and I want people to be comfortable, and I also care a lot about aesthetics. I probably care more about aesthetics than I should, but I do. So we've got really adorable tiny houses, 6 of them now on the property, and looking to build more. So that'll be the next book.
Yeah, because and that's another girl thing, is to be very concerned with the aesthetics. Whereas the guy, if it's if it looks like a refugee camp, as long as it's functional, we're okay with it.
Yeah, Tucker said, "What's wrong with tents?"
Yeah.
We have tents too.
Good. Katie, thanks so much for taking time to come on the show today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor, Mark.
In the Days of Noah, Book 2, Persecution by best-selling author Mark Goodwin. A globalist conspiracy transpires by way of a false flag attack against America's energy infrastructure. Noah and Cassandra Parker witness a complete economic meltdown, which is intentionally triggered by the event. The assault is blamed on patriots and Christians who are rounded up into detention centers across the country. Noah and his friends must take action to prepare for the meltdown and defend against the totalitarian regime, which is gunning for their freedom and, quite possibly, their very lives. Get your copy of The Days of Noah, Book 2, Persecution for Kindle, paperback or audio edition at Amazon.com today.